get on. Let's get it on. Oh,
Well, thank you. That's quite the way to go live right there.
we're singing hymns, right? Glory, glory, hallelujah.
Keep going.
Well, keep going.
Now I need some backup singers and dancers.
I didn't get the sheet music.
I don't think you want me to back that up.
Come on,
You're the dancer.
Rock the shoulder.
Okay.
East of Eden. Let's do some
What's up?
sinning.
What up, nerds? Welcome to the East of Eden John Steinbeck live show. We've got the Literary Discourse group here. That is the CodeX Cantina, Una and Krypto, along with your favorite nerd, Leslie from the Nerdy Narrative. If you don't know me, I'm sure you know me. You wouldn't be on my channel if you didn't know me. Guys, we are going to talk about our experience reading East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I don't know about y'all. I have not read any of John's work since high school. So I had completely forgotten anything I ever knew about him. And this book was an absolute delight. But East of Eden, first published in, I believe it was 1952. The working title, I want to say, was just the Salinas Valley, since it takes place in California, where I believe John, is that where he's from and where he grew up?
He lived there for a little while, yes.
Okay. And this book is said to be a retelling of the book of Genesis. I don't know if you guys agree. I don't know that I would call it a retelling. A retelling to me kind of means it takes the whole story and retells it. To me, it was more of a loosely based on, reimagined telling of the East of Eden or the book of Genesis. But guys, where do you want to start with this tonight?
At the beginning.
At the beginning. Okay. Well, what made you guys choose this book to cover by him?
That's a good question. So I've read our boy Johnny Beck is a favorite of ours. And actually it was I think the second author that we ever did on our channel. And I knew this was an author that I kind of wanted to revisit because, like I believe you said earlier, we hadn't read him since high school as well. Neither one of us. And I had done Grapes of Wrath. I had done Of Mice and Men. But I was like, I hate those books. I had those assigned in school, so I hate it.
Oh, required reading.
Like assigned reading. So we decided to kind of like revisit them because I think there's been a lot of assigned reading stigma books that I don't always have that. I know some people are like, yo, it was assigned, I hate it. So I had some hit and misses when I was, there were some books that I really, really enjoyed. This wasn't, Johnny Beck wasn't one of them. And we revisited Of Mice and Men and loved it. Absolutely loved it.
That's going to be my next pick of his.
Oh, it's a ride. It's a trip. And I didn't even remember the ending. People are like, wait till the ending. And I'm like, I don't remember what happens. So you hear, you start doing some research on Mr. Steinbeck. And you start to realize like he's done all these things in terms of like movies, in terms of other books that I've never read. And everybody says, you got to read East of Eden. East of Eden's like his greatest book ever. It's his magnum opus. And I'm like, okay, well, obviously I have to read it then. So we kind of just, we were talking with Christy Lewis. She was originally going to do it with us, but she kind of had to jump out for some reasons. And we thought, I think this summer's the summer. I think you read Johnny Steinbeck in the summer, and I think you read Fyodor Dostoevsky in the winter is the rule. That's just what I've heard. It's a rule. It's a rule. I don't like to break the rules.
I mean, whenever I think of Russia, I think of winter. For some reason, it always snows there in my mind.
Yeah.
I think of vodka. Is that telling of me?
Vodka and dill pickles.
Oh.
Have you tried that yet? That's what they do. They take a shot of vodka and they follow it up by biting into a dill pickle. I have friends from Russia.
I mean, is it that much different?
You don't have any friends. That's a lie. So I know it's not true.
I can send you pictures, sir.
Oh, this is not OnlyFans.
No. So we're starting off non-spoiler. For anybody who either watches this later or is in the chat that have not read John Steinbeck, haven't read East of Eden, and think it might be something they're interested in.
And first of all, you're the people we want to talk to, the people that haven't read. Like,
Right.
come take a seat. Like, we need to talk about Johnny Beck.
So I how to describe this book in a non-spoiler way to get folks interested in reading it, or to see if they are interested in reading it. If you had to describe it in just 3 or 4 sentences, what would you do?
Let me change the question. Let's pretend.
This is my stream, Una.
I know. This is the respect that you get on your stream, I tell you.
Hijacked.
So let's ask the question differently. Let's say you are looking to explore a classic for the first time, and you're not well versed in classics, okay? Or you're like, hey, I want to try getting into more. Is Brothers Karamazov the best place to start? And the answer is probably probably not. Probably not the first one to go to. Is Crime and Punishment the first spoiler to get to? And if Christy were here, she'd be like, heck yeah, it is, right? I want to pose the question of, could East of Eden be the number one recommendation of this is the first classic to pick up and jump into? So I guess the question is, what makes a good first classic for someone? And I'll kick it off. I'll kick it off, and I'm going to take the easy one here. And that has to be, when people think of classics, they tend to think of them as impenetrable. They're difficult to get through, or they're boring even, right? Laborious.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see East of Eden, you're like, oh, 600 pages. No, not doing that.
Well, I'm a fantasy reader, so 600 pages ain't nothing.
Sure, but for someone looking at a classic where they're worried about how will this feel when they look back to their high school days, and maybe some stories felt longer than they actually were. And the first thing I would say is that this reads like a 200-page book.
Yeah.
This is 600 pages.
I could have gone 1,200.
It felt like someone was just sitting you down on a couch. It's like, let me tell you my family history, because I think that's literally what was happening here. And I think that's one of the great moments in reading a book, is when you forget that you're reading it. You're just experiencing the story, and you're not putting in effort. It's just happening, and you want more. And I think that's what East of Eden can deliver for someone who's never read classic literature before.
It just flowed. It was so easy, because I thought, all right, this is this classic, and I'm going to read 30 pages a day, and I'm going to get through it. I really honestly thought I was going to find it boring or tedious. And I never did. I was pulled into the story with just the description of that valley in California right at the beginning. And I guess because he grew up there, he knew the beauty of that valley, and he was just able to put it in words. Brought me right in. And the majority of the story is focused on 2 families, the Trasks and the Hamiltons. And I have never enjoyed reading about normal everyday life of 2 families like I did with these. And I'm not kidding. I really could have just kept reading on about these families until he would have kept going. I just didn't expect a book published in the 50s to read so easily, so well. It wasn't stilted. It still felt relevant today. The story, I think I enjoyed it just as much today as I would have if I read it when it first came out as a new release. I can't wait to read it again.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything being said. For me, when I look at it as a teacher, I think that you can address older students, and you can address, adults, young adults, older adults, and say, hey, you may have struggled with reading in the past and they want to pick up a book. They may have struggled, with those, like we said, assigned reading that has that stigma to it. And this is a starter classic literature novel in my mind. This is something that is going to, and I hate to use the word simple, but it does break down a lot of those very complex Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment, and Brothers Karamazov into a more approachable and digestible text for somebody that's just wanting to get into this, that has that negative connotation to maybe reading overall, or reading some of the, you know, classic greats that they were forced to read, and they want something that's enjoyable. And I think that's the key word, is when you want to read, that's something that's enjoyable. And in high school and college, a lot of times you don't get that because you're forced to, and so you already have a negative mindset. With this book, coming into it willingly, I think that you are going to be able to enjoy it and get away from maybe what you have set yourself up as a roadblock from your education years.
And I'll put it this way. Everybody, I think most people here, you know, I'm seeing the chat, I'm seeing some friends here. I think they know I'm kind of the schedule guy, right? Like, I need to know exactly what I'm reading for the next 12 months to
12, only 12? Like
we're beyond 12 months. I'm compensating. So for me, after reading this book, I'm like, what's getting the boot? I'm moving something because I have to read more John Steinbeck because it's just that good.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need Grapes of Wrath. We need to throw that on the schedule.
Oh yeah. It's been.
I'm an Okie, so we got to go to Oklahoma.
Yeah, just let me know when. I will definitely make a spot for it. I'm already going to make one for my submission. I have to have more of this writing. If this is how he writes across the board, I'm definitely in. So, well,
I will say, I mean, not spoiler or anything, but if you do take in consideration, this is by many critics his, you know, greatest work, and he's even quoted as saying that everything he had written up to that point was practice for East of Eden.
Oh wow!
Yeah, he really felt like this was his magnum opus.
It's so personal for him too.
Yeah.
It really is. And more on that later.
Right.
Alan's already hit on it in the comments, and we're gonna definitely talk about that a little bit further in the conversation under the spoiler section, just in case those who haven't read it would like to discover that little surprise for themselves. But for the plot summary, I don't know that I could summarize this in a few words without going on one of my 10-minute explanations of what this summary is. But if I were to try, I would say...
Are we leaving spoiler territory now? Is this officially...
Well, I would say... Well, would you think talking about the plot in a general sense is spoilery?
Depends on how far you go, right?
Okay, here's a very basic one, right? East of Eden is a family drama of sins of the father, a little bit of redemption, freedom of choice or free will, and based on chapters from the book of the Bible of Genesis, revolving around and making heavy references to the biblical brothers Cain and Abel.
Yes, absolutely. That's perfect. Well, okay. I would definitely say we're going to get into the spoiler field after this, because I want to talk about the themes of the book, and I don't want to, what I interpret them to be, and I definitely wouldn't want to color anyone else's opinion of the book before they read it, if there are those in the chat that are planning on reading it. So if you're in the chat right now and you haven't read East of Eden, go ahead, dip out, get your hands on a copy, whether it be through your library. You're going to want to buy your own copy. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that. You will get through chapter 1 and decide you need your own copy in your hands, one that you're going to reread many times over. Well, not everybody's a rereader.
And
like
smell,
that.
right? And smell.
You know, this one didn't really do it for me, and it's because of the deckled edges. The deckled edges books, you can't really get that good page flippage because it does it in huge chunks. See those big chunks? That doesn't work. You need one that's like individualized. Because,
show me that Clarice. Yeah.
See, not only do you get an uninterrupted wafting of the pages.
One more time. Yeah. Oh,
You
yeah.
gotta
left-
close your eyes.
We're in spoiler territory and PG-13 now, apparently.
Okay.
Sorry, see.
All right. Well, surely that was enough time for those to leave that haven't read. Bye, John. Thank you for popping by. Let's get into, I know, Kate, right? Let's get into the themes, which Krypto already went over when he did his plot summary. So definitely good and evil. It felt to me, in my interpretation, John Steinbeck had a very clear picture of what good and evil was, and that it seemed he believed each individual person fought that battle all of their lives. Like it was just a constant battle to choose between good and evil. Do you guys agree? What do you think?
Yeah, and I think the output of that choice matters too. Because when we go back to, because this is based on the Cain and Abel, retelling of Genesis, if you will. It's not an allegory. To make sure, if it wasn't clear earlier, it's not an allegory. This is an exploration of that. And I think so many people get confused when what happens with Cain and Abel. They're like, wait, he just lets Cain go and says nobody can hurt Cain. That's a little strange. Like you're so used to eye for an eye, wanting to punish those that do wrong to you. And I think we can all feel that way. And what happens to Cain? Does he feel this feeling of regret? Does he see change? And most importantly, is he given an opportunity to make a different choice in the future? And I think that this book is one that's great at exploring that through a generation. And I'd be curious, do you guys think if you had to pick one character of whose story is this, what character would you pick?
I mean, I'm almost tempted to say John Steinbeck because it feels like he's our narrator. He wrote himself into the book.
Oh, yeah.
There were so many times where the viewpoint would also change. Like the narrator was telling the story from different family members' point of views and would switch to where we're getting their first person thoughts. And then he would have like his own section of thoughts. And I wonder, was it his story? Is it about his family? Is it just his observations of people? But as far as if I had to pick one of the other characters, if it was their story, I almost feel that it was Cal's story. Caleb.
I know who Cal is.
Yeah. I would disagree. Going back to the idea of good and evil, those are human-made terms, and that's how we describe each other. And I think that in this story, it encapsulates perfectly in two characters. It's not a single character story. It's two. And you have Samuel being the representation of good, and you have Kate being the representation of evil. And so I think it's two. I don't think, maybe you can make an argument for one, but I really think since the story, its big premise is good and evil, and that good and evil is represented by people, that it's both of those people.
I can get behind that. I loved Samuel and I loved Lee. I could do without the others, but old Kathy, oh man, I was so disappointed that she killed herself. I wanted somebody else to just get rid of her. She was so hateful. She woke up and chose evil every day. Her output every day was
who are you talking about? Well, who are you talking about?
Kathy. Well, wasn't her name Kathy?
Kathy Ames or Kate.
And then she later changed it to Kate.
Kate, yeah. See, and I disagree. I mean, yes, she is supposed to be the antithesis of complete evil, but there is no backstory of why she is the way that she is. And that's one, I think, of the great critiques of this story is, why is Kate evil? he never gives an explanation. I mean, yeah, some bad things happen to her, but we don't know the formation of her childhood. So why is she doing that? Yeah, why is she choosing evil? But why is
I
she
don't
making
know.
these choices? Why is she,
It
she becoming a
just,
whore? Why is she doing drugs? Why is she a sadomasochist? We don't know. And that's one, I think, a slight failing of the book is we never get that explanation. And that would be some crucial character development, especially being a piece that is all character development. One of my tiny little nitpicks.
I kind of felt that, in my opinion, in the beginning when we first met her, and there was clearly something different about her and how she was just able to meet somebody and know just what to do to get them under her thumb. I just kind of wondered, is she the serpent, or is she some sort of demon? In the beginning of the book, I had no idea what to expect, what we were going to get out of the rest of the story, like where it was going to go. And I was like, oh, she's a demon. She's got a demon in her.
And you hope for her redemption, or you hope that she gets her comeuppance, and she gets neither. And that's another frustrating part of the book as well, right? And a lot of people critique that of like, you have almost this perfect story, and the bad guy is supposed to be punished or redeemed, and she gets out the easy way of committing suicide.
On that same tangent of you're disappointed because you don't get either her, what you just said is not coming out right. On that same token, I was really kind of shocked and not sure how to feel about the ending where Caleb and what's the little girl's name that was dating Aaron, and then she switched.
Abrabacon.
Yes, and then
right?
They realized, and the whole time I'm thinking those two are just two peas in a pod, and then they get together, and then they just go off, and I'm like, well, now wait a minute, now is that how that's supposed to go? I wasn't ready for the book to be over, and I wasn't exactly thrilled with that ending. I think it's because of how that story goes in Genesis that it just didn't line up for me, and it just kind of felt unfinished. Just if you go da 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 da, and then you stop, you don't do the pat, like it bothers you, right? You're like,
well, let me say this though. What you say, it doesn't line up with the story, but I think we can all agree that when Cain does it in the Bible, it's strange that he's marked, he's cursed, right? He lives a cursed life, but no one's allowed to hurt him. No one's allowed to get revenge, essentially, right?
Yeah. It's not strange. That is an intense punishment, bro. Wasn't he immortal too, supposedly?
But isn't
you've been watching too much Lucifer?
I've been reading too much of that Man from Glengarry. You don't want that revenge, right? That's
well, I think what you're trying to say is right. We have a positive ending to the story, and Caleb and
sort of
Bacon are not repeating the mistakes of their parents, and that isn't kind of aligned up with what happens for the Bible.
Well, but it also is. It's sort of hopeful because for those that maybe were hoping for Kathy's redemption, we got that with Cal, or the possibility of it, because he was really trying. When he came face to face with how he was perceived by others, he really honestly wanted to change that. He really wanted to be a better person. And I loved that, but I was scared to get too attached to him, to like him, because I'm like, something bad's going to happen to him. And it just was kind of like John's last little, hey, let me show you this one last theme of free will before I let y'all go. They have the free will to just go and make their future and choose how they want to move forward. And I'm deciding that they chose to be good people.
But that doesn't mean that they aren't still struggling with the choices every single day. Somebody made a comment earlier that every day you're making a choice of good or bad, right? Or good or evil, positive, negative.
Well, yeah.
So,
when Bandit broke his leash today, I had to choose between good and evil of where my foot was going to go when I got hold of him.
But I think, isn't this, I don't know, I guess, what is some of the teachings or one of the ways to take the teachings of Cain and Abel? Because we don't look for direct, man isn't meant to be the arbiter of who gets what justice all the time, right? A lot of that judgment is supposed to be divine judgment or reserved.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that say when we have the story that's like, be careful of judgment, be careful of choice. People can always choose and have the choice. That's supposed to be the gift that we have to be better. And what does that mean when we don't want to give someone that opportunity, that we do want someone to die in a sense? And isn't that actually kind of aligned conceptually with Cain and Abel, where man isn't supposed to make that judgment? We're supposed to be given that opportunity for free will and choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's partly what you guys have also kind of referred to. We've moved a lot from Kathy to the kids, like the big generation gaps here too, right?
Yeah.
But through the whole piece, Kathy plays the temptress. She gives every character the choice to choose evil, whether it be Charles sleeping with her, when these when to sleep with her. But she was we could call her the devil, we could call her the snake, but all she was doing was giving someone the opportunity to choose evil, and sometimes they did, right? And we blame her. She is evil. I mean, she killed her parents, right? She killed them.
She did.
She's a murderer. She's an arsonist, right? She's a liar, fraudist.
Mean.
You said we didn't get a backstory. I don't know. I think we got a little bit of a vignette of her backstory, right? In terms of when she was younger and she framed the boys at school.
But why is she doing everything like this? What is her motivation?
What
broke her?
I have to wonder, because another theme that we saw throughout this book was paternal rejection. And I wonder if maybe he didn't outline it like he did with Adam and his dad. I forget the dad's name. Cyrus. But, the dad was just a big fat phony, a liar. He got his wealth
Cyrus
by frauding,
lying.
Everybody. And which the inheritance, as it got passed down, I think the inheritance was evil. All of the ones who chose to do something with that inheritance were usually evil-ish. And the ones who either ignored it, like Adam tried to do a business venture with it, which fell flat. And so it kind of skipped over him. And then Aaron, when he got it, it's almost like the original sin, what it did to people. But the paternal rejection passed down. And even though Adam did it, he turned around and did it to Aaron and Caleb. He liked Aaron over Caleb. And, that just really hacked me off. And the reason why it hacked me off is Adam had the love of his father over Charles. It mattered to Charles. Adam didn't care. And then he turned around and did it to his own sons, even when Charles told him, Charles never let him forget that their father loved the puppy over the knife. And I mean, I felt that. I really
I think it comes back to the quote from the Bible itself is, am I my brother's keeper? I mean, to quote the actual Bible, I think that's what it comes down to.
I think that was mentioned too. Yeah.
A lot of the way that I took Adam is I know you, Krypto, have had to listen to us, my own sermon on this one. Leslie, do you know what it means to be a biblical man when I say that?
No.
She likes the biblical beards.
Yeah, I like some fur. So
they say one of the important things of living the Christian life is to be productive, to be active, and to actively do good, right? And they say that that's part of the fall of Adam and Eve, was that he wasn't active when Eve offered the apple. He wasn't stop. We're not supposed to do that.
Mhm.
And, by the sweat of your brow is how you earn your way into heaven, quote unquote. To me, Steinbeck, heavily Episcopalian, is writing Adam, directly his name, Adam, right?
Mhm.
To be that biblical man that failed to be the active person making a choice. Every time he was given a choice, what'd he do? He just sat there. He was lazy. He
Oh,
didn't.
yeah. He was a bum for what?
Yeah.
How many years?
We think
Decades.
we think the only
Yeah.
choice is good and evil a lot, but I think another choice is nothing. And I
Mhm.
think that's what Adam was doing most of the time through the story, was being one who doesn't take his own destiny, which is, quote unquote, God's greatest gift to man, is free will. And by
Mhm.
rejecting the ability to make a decision, you're rejecting that gift, in a sense, is kind of how I took his character.
Well, I think it brings it back to one of the other themes that we really haven't touched upon is, again, going a little history side here, is how important land is to the United States, how important land is to farmers, the main job of most people throughout all of time. And I think that land is used very strategically in here to represent the families and to
Mhm.
represent the characteristics of the families. And, one of the things that you mentioned, Una, is that, you're supposed to work. Well, what work is that? You're supposed to be a productive farmer and help provide for your community and your own family.
By the
So I
sweat
think
of
that,
his brow, right?
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And sow the seeds, and there's just, yeah, I felt that when we kind of get back to the idea of why you should read this book. Most people have some religious background, whether you're a devout follower or not. It's easy for some people with that background to be able to follow along the story and pick up a lot of those nuances when you might struggle with some of the literature that you were forced to read in high school and college of the quote
Mhm.
classic literature.
Favorite character?
Kathy.
I was gonna say Kathy.
Well, y'all
I
can fight over her. Lee was my favorite character. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
Lee was the most important character. He definitely had my favorite chapter. Chapter 24 was my favorite chapter, but also when Lee was studying with the others, his elders, and they were translating the Hebrew words, the whole, I don't know how to say that word, Timshil,
Don't know.
but
I say Tim Shell, but I don't know how to pronounce it either.
But when they talked that whole section and
Man.
how that translated into thou mayest,
Yes.
and how that just open, just wide open on
Mind
the
blown.
possibility, like,
Yeah. That has to be some of the highlight of anything I've read. Like, that's got to be top 5 moments in literature, I think, is Tim Shell, for sure.
oh man.
I've been meaning, I've wanted to ask you, Krypto specifically. I know you've shared publicly that you've had Catholic schooling in your background in terms of studying the Bible, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, Catholicism doesn't believe in predestination, et cetera, et cetera. Did you guys cover thou mayest or Tim Shell at all? Like, was it thou shalt, or how was that presented to you? Do you? I mean, I know this is 20 some odd years ago. It's kind of an unfair question. Maybe a more
who
fair
art in
question.
heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come,
Right.
thy will be done on earth
You
as
say
in
it this
heaven.
exact way
Yeah,
every single
yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's thou.
let me ask it a
Forgive us our
different.
trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the glory.
Let me ask it a different way. Are you done? You done?
You were interrupting my prayer. I'm
So
gonna bless you now.
So is it? How did that part land upon you with the thou mayest? Because for me, my mind was blown. I thought it was absolutely stunning. Couldn't believe it. Like, I was like, is this true? Like, holy crap!
That was the only time that I willingly stopped reading and put the book down and just basked in that chapter. I reread that chapter after I let it sink in for a minute, and I was just like, wow, that
Yeah,
that
give me
was
an ice
just-
pack. Whew.
yeah, that was just the
Yeah,
that was the book right there.
it really does give you a sense of why it's so important to read and to have discussions about literature. And it really, when you read something like that and it opens your heart, no pun intended, it really is easy to make the argument that writing is the greatest invention of humankind. No matter what we ever do, it defines us as a people. That included in all the other arts. It makes us who we are. And when you can have that experience all these years later through John Steinbeck, you were with him in that reading, and now we're here together. It is the thing that should truly unite us.
Yeah, I think even someone who isn't religious, I still think that would have a huge impact just on how freeing that was. Like, that literally, for both Samuel and Adam, I felt changed them, especially Samuel. I think that just really just opened things wide up. Lee was just such an amazing character. Besides that particular passage, which the Tim Shell, where Lee said that was the most important word in the world. Besides that, there was a section, I don't know if you remember, but Lee and Samuel, I believe when they first met and really talked, when Lee dropped talking in Pidgin and he was just talking to him in normal English, there was a question about why he was a servant, why he chose to be a servant and work for Adam. And Lee was like, I don't know why the servant as a job ever got a disreputable spin on the term. He said, people who have good servants, actually, the servant is put into a place of power. They're respected. They're loved. They're a part of the family. They are trusted more so than some of your own full-blooded and family. And I never thought of it that way. Never thought of it. I've read so many books that had servants, and some of them, really cared for them. But Lee, when he said that, I started paying attention to anything he was in, and he loved Adam and those boys, and they loved him. And even when he thought he had that dream where he wanted to have his own bookstore, he saved all of his money, and then he finally left to go do it, and then he came right back. I was so glad when he came back. I'm not going to lie. I'm sorry he didn't fulfill his dream to have a bookstore, but I felt like he belonged with that family. I think he had such an effect on the lives of Adam and the boys that they wouldn't have turned out the way they did without him. And especially, I don't know that the twins would have lived, because Adam was checked out, the first year or so. They didn't even have names, which that chapter was a great chapter too.
To loop back to kind of the beginning when we talk about, Una had asked who the main characters of the book, whose story is this? And I said that, it's Kate and Samuel's, because they're the antithesis of good and evil. I still think that's true. But with Lee, I think his is the most important journey of the story, because you get some of the redemption and you get a little bit of the hero's journey. And I think that a good lesson can be learned from Lee, because he put aside his own personal dreams to what he knew was more important, of being with the boys. And that's, a very teachable moment that a lot of us, have to come to realize at some point in our lives. Yeah, definitely an incredible character.
I think you see a little bit of that from Olive too. I think she drove and took care of her family in the same way that Lee was kind of the philosophical moral compass for the Trask side. Olive was for the Hamilton side.
So you mean Una Hamilton wasn't your favorite character?
Poor Una Hamilton.
She was the best.
Oh, she was the best.
She was
she was the first one to die, wasn't she?
All page and a half of her was great.
She broke Hamilton. She broke Samuel. Yeah, when he learns of her death,
Oh,
man. That was a turning point, and that's one of the things that really stuck out to me in the book, is
that aged him.
The cast of characters, and you become invested in some, and some of them felt throwaway, but it felt like a necessity, to have the development of Samuel and his family.
There were some that definitely got less time on the pages than others, but I felt they each had a purpose. Like we got, like Una said, we got a page and a half of the girl Una, but she had her death really aged Samuel, and I think put him in the ground a lot sooner than he would have been. I was so sad. I mean, I knew I knew it was coming when she died and how he reacted, but I was so sad when the Hamiltons and the Hamilton children started dying. That was so sad.
It's one of those things that I will revisit this book at some point, and it will be after I've read the full biography of John Steinbeck. If you didn't know, the Hamiltons are his family, so it's his tribute to the Steinbecks.
I did not know that.
Samuel Hamilton is based on his grandfather who settled the land and who raised his family and took care of them. So it's his love letter to his family, the Hamiltons. And that's why you may have felt those characters, it's like, well, what's their interaction with the Trask? Totally. It's kind of questionable, but arguably they felt like really real characters. We talked about the humor of the plane ride, of the smiling and the stop, and he's like, you want to keep going, and she's just smiling because she can't hear. But that's his love letter to his real life and his real family. And the Trasks are what he called his symbol family. And what I'd love to do is go back through this book a second time. This was my first time reading it. I absolutely loved it. But if you didn't know, John Steinbeck kept a journal every single day as he was writing this. So you can actually check out this book, this journal, and you'll get his actual thoughts and notes and stuff that he was thinking as he was working through this. And it can't help but hit you in the heart, I think, the way that he injects real people and his love letter to his family and the Hamiltons. And he wraps up the problem of humanity with the Trasks. And then he puts the philosophical heart of Lee, where he just keeps dropping this wisdom every time he enters into the scene. He's like, by the way, here's a truth. And you're like, I got to write that down. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Basically, every time he came into scene, I was like, okay, get my pen out. He's going to say something amazing.
Yeah. He was, gosh, he just, and I mean, that explains a lot because with the Hamiltons being based on his family, they felt authentic. They felt real. And I mean, clearly he knew them so well that he could just put them on paper and make them 3D to us.
Right.
I mean,
it's complicated too, because I do also understand the argument of what is their purpose for the narrative. And I think they make sense personally. I think they make sense emotionally, but I also understand the argument of narratively, must you have Hamiltons to tell this story? And I'm not saying they don't need to be there, but I'm not as confident of, yes, you need the Hamiltons for the story.
Maybe you don't need all of the Hamiltons.
No.
Yeah. Like I'm saying like, holistically.
I mean, you have to have some of them, otherwise there's no story, because they are, quote, the main characters.
Well, the Trasks are the main characters, if you ask me. They're the ones that drive a lot of the narrative here. If you take the Hamiltons out, do they impact Kathy's behavior or actions? No.
No, but I don't even know that Kathy was that important. I think she was just...
Don't you talk about my girl like that.
I think she was just there for maybe entertainment purposes, just to liven things up a bit. I could have just read that story with Adam and the boys and Samuel and Lee and been just as fine.
Kathy is one of the greatest creations that's ever happened. I won't have you besmirch her name like this.
She is a horrible person.
She's
not even a person.
Exactly. It's great. She's
a demon.
She gets introduced to the story and it's a whirlwind from there. You can't put her in the room and take her out and expect the room to look the same as when she was put in. And that's what makes her a great character.
It doesn't look the
And-
same because she kills whoever else is in the room with her.
You're darn right. Or she
me.
convinces the person in the room to kill the other person in the room. It's great.
All right,
Poor
hold on, Leslie Trask. What is your favorite comic? And please don't say the One Piece.
It's One Piece, clearly.
My favorite comic or
Yeah.
manga?
One Piece to
Because-
rule them all.
Not manga, because I don't know it well enough.
Favorite comic? I
Yeah, real quick, come
haven't read a whole
Come
lot
on,
of comics.
real quick.
Well,
then just
out
pick
of what
one.
out of what I read, I'm gonna have to go with Green Lantern.
Okay, why is he such a good character? Because of the villains he has to fight and the tragedy
No,
and the things he has to
see,
overcome.
well,
So without Kate in this story, then you don't get that.
no, see, I don't even like the Green Lantern Hal Jordan. I like Guy Gardner, and I like him because he's snarky.
You like
And-
the football jock?
He's
Of course she
hilarious.
does.
He speaks his mind, and he doesn't need no stinking villains to steal the show.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Oh.
Whatever.
But I think your point stands is that villains bring out the best of characters, right? Like if everything
She's
were
a necessary evil, pun intended.
yeah. I've read a short. I don't know if I agree with it. Let me just pose what this person's view was. This isn't my view. They said their argument was that Kathy was not evil. They present Kathy, which I mean, she committed murder, arson. I mean, kind of hard to defend that. But in the main narrative of what happens with the Trasks, their argument is Kathy never does anything to them. She never does anything directly to them. She instead offers choices. She didn't make Charles cheat. She offered.
I
it.
mean,
It
she
takes-
kind
It takes two to tango. So let's
It does.
entertain it seriously.
I
Is
am
it-
entertaining it seriously.
Is it
I
really
mean-
she's evil, or is it people chose evil to the Tim Shell point of this novel?
Both.
She kills the brothel lady.
Yeah.
The
Who loved her? She had that lady love her.
the article was
Oh.
specifically in the context of the Trask decisions, right?
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, she murdered her parents, like not even just Faye. Like that seems like
She okay, look.
But
so. In
that's- I
the
mean,
context
In
of
regards to Trask, she got pregnant with Charles's children,
by herself,
not by herself, but she could have told
it
Adam.
takes two to tango.
takes two to tango. I think the argument's there, interestingly enough, and I never thought about that.
No. I mean, you're dividing her in two different people, saying, well, she's only evil in this regard. And I don't think that you can put that stipulation on you're only evil when, it's like,
She's
you're-
evil.
if I'm good now and I'm not good when I'm visiting family, am I truly good or am I
Well,
truly bad?
I think this
Well,
is.
I would need to meet your family first.
I think this is actually the point that I wanted you to say, because I want to go back to something you said at the beginning of the stream, and I didn't get a chance to respond to it. And you said we never got the backstory on what caused Kathy to be this way. And the reason I disagree with that is because I think this ties in with the Tim Shell argument. The big reveal at the end is that there wasn't something that caused her to do that. She chose every step of the way to do this. She chose that evil. And I think that's the big reveal.
What
is because-
drives her was my question. That's never
She
explored.
is just
that's what I'm
plain
answering.
mean.
That's what I'm answering. Is she chose
Okay.
to? There's nothing. That's the exact argument. You're
Simple,
looking
just-
to blame something else. That's the point of Tim Shell. You can't blame something else. It's on you to make the choice.
Okay, and that's where I argue with some of the critiques I have with the novel of that's too simplistic for real life. We make choices based on nature and nurture, and something broke her or drove her forward, and that's never explored.
And I don't fully agree with that, to be
Okay,
honest.
and that's
because
fine.
because just because someone does something wrong to you, you're saying that allows you to do something wrong to others. That's
it allows you to make.
You just said that.
No, it gives you a reason to make a choice to do that.
Influences.
I think you just said it does. If someone does something wrong to you, you just said it gives you a reason to do it.
It gives you a choice, and that's going to drive you to make that choice. You could make the choice without it, but we never get that for Kathy. We don't have her motivations.
I think she was just mean, plain mean, because she wanted to be.
And again,
Yep.
and we can all disagree, and I disagree with that. There is no you're just this way. There's a reason.
I think you're arguing the slippery slope of, well, someone else caused her to be that way, right? So then you play the game of, well, what caused that person to do it? And you ultimately have to end up at someone chose evil first.
Yeah, and that's called sins of the father, I think. Oh, maybe come back there full circle.
Right, that's exactly the point. Right.
Yeah. Choose to make the more difficult choices of gaining against the nature and past.
And I think that's what Caleb did at the end. And it was not easy. That was so hard for him. And what would you guys do if you were Adam and you found out your wife, who shot you in the shoulder, by the way, the day that she left you with the newborn twins, and you found out you found out she's running a whorehouse in town? Would y'all just let that go on and keep it a secret from the twins?
Well, Una I wouldn't, because other people don't make decisions for him or influence him, right? You just let it go.
I would have taken her out, and I was so shocked when the sheriff figured it out and just goes and tells her, it's like, hey, just change your name, okay? I was like, wait a minute, that's not how I expected that to go. But yeah, I would not have chosen good like Adam. I would have chosen evil that day. Yeah. Oh yeah, I would have gotten rid of her a whole long time ago, though. She was so hateful to him. I mean, she in her defense, she did keep telling him, I don't want to go here. I don't want to go to California. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I don't want to marry you. I don't want to do this. I don't want to have children. I don't want to keep children. She did tell him, and he was so smitten that he just ignored it. So it's a little bit on him. He chose to try to make her stay. He chose not to respect what she wanted to do. There was no discussion. It was, hey, I have all this money and we're going to go here and we're going to build this house and we're going to have this rich land, which I felt so bad because he bought this really prime land. Like you were talking about how important that was. He did nothing with it because she left soon thereafter. He didn't farm it. And over here, the Hamiltons are struggling. They are trying to farm their land. And it's just, it doesn't bear forth anything for them. They're struggling so bad. Yeah, here's Adam with all this money, all this fertile land, and doesn't do anything with it. But I do appreciate that Samuel never really pointed that out to him. But he did tickle me when he punched Adam to bring him around and just kind of come back to reality and sit up and take notice. And hey, you have these children. They were like a year old and they don't even have names. I just can't. I can't imagine.
It's the A's were constantly not doing. They weren't making decisions, I felt like. And I feel like the C's, like Charles and Kane, they were the ones that were making decisions and trying to force change into this world. And then there's Lee, who changed through awareness, I would say. His philosophy made people more aware of the decisions that they were made, that like, look, just because, as we're talking about the sins of your father, these bad things happen, doesn't mean you have to perpetuate that. You have the choice to make whatever decision that you need to, because the ultimate gift, in theory, in Christian terms, is free will, is the ultimate gift. And I think that's what Lee's moral compass was to get you there.
Mm-hmm. So we have a question
Who the daddy?
Starscream. I say Charles is the daddy. I don't think.
Do
Kathy
we have any inclination that there was like a romantic relationship between Adam and her at all? Because she always feigned being too sick or whatever.
They
right?
were together once because he thought they were his because of that one union, and then she got pregnant. Well, she was already pregnant, because even Adam himself, when he looked at him, he was like, just for an instant, Caleb looked just like Charles to him. And of course, Aaron was blonde and very fair, so he looked like Kathy. So I definitely think Charles was the daddy.
Well, let's put it this way. Where did humanity spring from, Adam or Cain? Or Abel or Cain, sorry.
Now I'm confused. What is the question?
Where did humanity spring from? It came from Cain, which would be Charles.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going down that symbolic route of,
but then you could go Adam and Eve.
Well, if we're talking symbols, the two that had the mark of Cain were Charles and Kathy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because they were a match made in heaven.
They were great. I loved Kathy. She's so good.
Weirdo.
Keep Kathy out of this story, and what do you have? You have Lee just being too presumptive.
You leave Lee alone.
Lee needs evil for him to have the excuse of, I must pass my philosophy. Otherwise, he's just butting in.
Guys, this is the perfect time to interrupt. Final thoughts regarding East of Eden. Here's my final thought. I can't wait to reread this just for the pure enjoyment of visiting these characters again, but just to see what I missed from the first time. And then, of course, with all of the things that we discussed, some of the things you guys noticed that I didn't pick up on, I want to keep that in mind. Read it again and see if that changes my perspective on. I'm most especially interested to see if my opinion of Kathy changes, and I will definitely be looking for what Krypto was saying in regards to there was no traumatic event in her life that made her decide or influence her to choose evil.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I mean, I love the book. I think it's a great starter,
gateway to classics.
Gateway to classics. Yeah, it's a gateway classic book that is going to take something that is very, very deep. I mean, we've gone down some rabbit holes tonight, and allow you to explore some very tough themes of life and choice and free will. And, change up a little bit, maybe something you're learning in Bible study, or some very deep philosophical debates or discussions that you might have had with your friends or in school. And it simplifies it for you, and it lays it out in a way that is through something we can all relate to, family. And I think that's what makes this a fantastic story, is it's told through its characters. And that's something that we all can usually relate to. And we see ourselves in some of those characters. So we have Lee, we have Kathy, and we have Samuel.
Well, at least two of us are good people.
I like what Christina wrote up here, where she wrote, otherwise we would all be condemned from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important thing to think about too, in terms of, a lot of, I'm not anti-Calvinist or anything like that, but when you talk to Calvinists, a lot of times they point to Romans 9 and the idea that God can basically choose whose heart he hardens. He can choose, who he leaves alone, essentially. And I think that's really important for us to think about. What does it mean? Do we really think that we are predestined, or our hearts are hardened and we don't have a choice because this traumatic event happened? And don't get me wrong, there's traumatic events that happen that impact you psychologically. This is real life, right? Mm-hmm. But by whole and large, the day-to-day struggle, stuff that's going to happen that sucks, It's going to be hard. But at the end of the day, it's our choice how we handle that, how we react to that. Maybe not how we always feel to it. Maybe you can manipulate it to an extent. But I think that's the greatest challenge that we have as people is how do we react to our environments? And Tim Shell is the answer.
Mm-hmm. The most important word in the world, according to East of Eden. All right, guys. Well, that is going to wrap it up for East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I hope you guys pick this book up and give it a shot if you haven't. If you do read it, I hope it leads you to reading more wonderful classics, just like me. What is Starscream saying? I'm going to give this a perfect 10, 9, 9.5, 9.75. I am going to give it a definite 10. I can't wait to read it again. I can't wait to read more by John Steinbeck, but you guys already know I'm a huge fan of classics, and that is 100% based on watching the CodeX Cantina. So if you guys are not subscribed to Una and Krypto and you enjoyed this conversation, they do this every week, twice a week at least, sometimes 3 times if we are lucky. Y'all, I have them linked down below. Check them out. We will catch you guys in the next one. So come back and join us for another wonderful talk about a favorite classic. See you guys later.
Peace.